Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai. Call hello, Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai Ba'Shem. Racha Kodash, the honors to the apostles. That was a great millstone. Peace, blessings, to salutation to the for the elect. It's Brother Isaiah. Back with another lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai, Lord willing. This lesson is edifying. You women. Alright. I watched these things called anime recaps. And basically, it's a narration, sometimes still images, sometimes it's videos, and there's usually an AI narrator going over certain things. And there was recently one I was listening to / watching because it was a still image with a narrator, and it was going into apocalyptic, so to speak, times, end times, Jacob's trouble scenarios. There was an individual who prepared. He was prepared. He had a apartment, and basically he had spiritual power too. He had spiritual power. He was able to kind of overcome. Now, of course, it was based in fiction, but there was some realistic or reality-based scenarios that occurred in this anime. And Lord willing, this is edifying, Salakia. But I just was having thoughts as I was watching it, and I was like, man, this would be a sight. And I've had a chance to see the stubbornness of some females, the undying will to rebel that some women have. As the scriptures say, rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. And you have women that, for whatever reason in their mind, they've rationalized, that are ultimately super rebellious. And so there was a scenario in this manga, whatever you want to call it, which it in itself, I believe, may have been AI generated, but that's neither here nor there. And I'm going to get to it. Salakia, I'm being long-winded. I'm just trying to go through the spirit. So there was a guy, he was the maintenance guy of an apartment building. He was holed up in this apartment building with these privileged women. And these women voted on some feminist stuff to kick him out. We're going to form a women's squad, and we don't need men. Kick him out. They voted the guy out and he was already planning to leave, so they gave him an out to get away from them. And come to find out, he had a surplus of goods. He was prepared. And they had a few little things here and there, which eventually ran out. And very quickly, they began to descend into despair because they could not defend themselves against the dangers that existed. There were some skilled women. One of them was a bodyguard, but she was no match against the dangers that presented themselves in these apocalyptic, as the scriptures say, perilous times. Know this, that in the end time, there shall be perilous times. Let me get that scripture, man. Okay. And this all just ties in, because daily, it never fails to amaze me as the Lord reveals these things. And this phone's dying, so I don't know how long I'm going to. Okay, I'm going to just put in perilous times. Know this, 2 Timothy 3, let me open it, in verse 1 says, know this also, that in the last days perilous times shall come. Okay? There was perilous times. Food was scarce. Water was scarce. But as if it were magic, this man who represents the elect, guess what he had? He had food. He had water. He had electricity. Certain things that are necessities that people use daily to keep, that he had them. And yet these women casted him off while they were in their comfortability, casted him off as nothing. But as the scriptures say, because right now a man is not more precious than fine gold. Not a man of the elect. Not to these women. No, to these women, you're a second string. Generally speaking, you're not the first option. All right. Even if you are, as we understand, because the Lord made us lively stones. Okay, it's not that we're not good, or so to speak, or charismatic. Brothers, we are all unique and charismatic in our own ways. But it just comes down to the fact that women are opportunistic. And women practice, I forget what that word is called, hypergamy. A woman will choose the best option in any given situation that suits her comfortability and how she feels. Many women are, what's the word? Attention whores. It becomes like a drug, a dopamine addiction, to get these compliments from these various men that they have no clue who they are. Right? But it makes them feel all warm and tingly when the man says, "Ooh, look at that, look at your ass, it's so big," and "Oh, you so pretty," and whatever else compliments they receive, they love it, they eat it up. All right, and generally speaking, with us all being in the flesh, it's very hard to say that you don't have a woman that is swayed by that, even if she had a father that told her whatever, and whatever the case is, she still gets excited when that random man says, "Hey, you looking good today." All right, but in this anime, I'm gonna move back to because there was very interesting situations. You had these women with these mindsets, and I would marvel to see a woman maintain this level of arrogancy during the times of life and death struggle of Jacob's trouble, when martial law is in effect, and when what's the word, insurgency. Let me get that right. Let me get the scripture. Insurrection. Let's get that. 2nd Ezra 15. And let me see what's around it before I read 16. And 14. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. Right, this is coming. It says, for there shall be sedition among men. Sedition. Insurrection against the government. And invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes. In the course of their actions shall stand in their power. Alright, and this is the things that's coming, man. The course of a man's action is going to stand in the power that he has to execute those actions. Alright, if a man desires to have a woman and she be not protected, there will be very little that's going to stop him from having his way with that woman. And these are just the facts of the times that we're coming into. Yet, in this apocalyptic depiction story, you had women that, when faced with the reality of them not comparing, they paled in comparison to this man who represents the elect in this case, and the capability that he had to provide for them under his covering. They began to get arrogant. Who does he think he is? We're going to go over there and make him do A, B, and C. Before this world crash, he was a lowly doorman. And we were of a higher ilk, if that's the word. We were of a noble whatever it is. So we're going to force this former peon and peasant to do our bidding and to do the things that we see fit that he should do. And they began to realize very quickly that that their power over the male had dwindled to nothing, to ashes, to dust. And forgive me for my method of speaking right now. But these situations, I mean, if this really exists, if we really see this, it will be a marvel. So in some cases, the women were humbled, and they began to realize that they should serve this man in order to gain access to what he had. But you had a few women in this story that even when faced with the pure brute force of the male and the fact that they could not overcome him, because let's face it, this man became violent with these women when they began to get out of turn and to demand things of him and to belittle him. He began to be physical, and that will be a common occurrence during the times of lawlessness. The course of a man's action is going to stand in his power. If he's able to dominate you physically, especially when we're speaking of these wicked individuals that roam the streets already, okay, and some men who will be pushed to the brink of madness due to circumstance, if they have the strength to dominate you, you can guarantee you're going to be dominated. All right? And that just is what it is. And you had some individuals in this story that when faced with the domination, continued to be arrogant. Continue to say that, how dare you, and da-da-da. I mean, beaten and bloodied. You see, and I marveled. I was like, I know this is just, an anime or whatever, but do there really exist women? And you would be surprised, man. Look, there are women out there, I perceive, that even when faced with death, would rather die than to submit to a man, than to be told what to do. Okay? There are women in life, there are women who have what they call a lack of survival instinct. Okay? And if you don't realize, especially right now through the luxury that is afforded you by this system, okay? If you don't have a clue that you're in danger, I'm in danger. As that meme, that Simpsons meme with Ralph. Okay? If you don't realize you're in danger, then that's going to greatly influence your actions, especially if you're haughty. If if you have a proud stance of, who do you think you are, and I don't deserve, and I'll get this person to come and do. You got a lot of women that are just rowdy, and they're like, I'll get my brother, and I'll get my so-and-so to come do A, B, and C, and a lot of times, it'll be true. They'll have family members that will come to further positively reinforce their stupid behaviors. Okay? And so you're going to have women who are going to think that that's going to fly. And they're going to be unalived. They're going to die on that hill of feminism and men are beneath me, and Men, men can potentially be dangerous. You're not wrong to say that a man is dangerous. You should be wary of men because men are stronger than you. But to say that you don't need a man around is absurd because it's it's always been that women need men. It's always been that way. Men are protectors. Even the fact of just having a man around can serve as a protection because sometimes, unless you have select individuals that are capable, that will test the situation. So don't get me wrong, but generally speaking, just having a man present a lot of times is enough to prevent certain actions. Even if the man's not capable, but a man of the elect will be protected by Yahweh, by Hashem Yahweh Shai. So thus, the people under him will too also be protected. But men have been devalued in this society. Okay? Men have been devalued to the point where now a woman says that if she had to choose between a bear and a man, that she would rather be stuck with the bear. You see? And that in itself is ludicrous. Because you have no chance with a bear. If a bear decides he want to eat you and play, whatever you can't. At least with a man, if you you might could get lucky and do whatever, right? But a bear, hell, even a man versus a bear, in our current states now, our forefathers, yes, slew lions and such, yes, and the Lord's gonna raise up a standard, but it's ludicrous for women to say they would rather be in a situation with a bear, okay, than to take their chances with a male, okay, from a safety perspective. But anyway, the time's coming on the earth, as the scriptures say, where he will make a man more precious than fine gold, where 7 women shall cling to one man. All right, and you're gonna have a lot of these women are gonna have a rude awakening. Right now, they're in their comfortability and they have options. I could do this and I could pay this man to do, and they use their money, because I just says money is a defense. They use the acquisition of these things and the possession of these things to bolster their what's the word, confidence. But soon to come, these things will change when the vintage shall fail, and when the full storehouses shall be found empty. Then these women walking around with their gym clothes on, with they, basically skin tight colored panties. I mean, that's essentially what it is. Them damn the gym pants. Them ain't nothing but colored panties. You ain't leaving nothing really to the. I can see every curvature. There's no imagination. All right, neither here nor there. Right, but women will begin to hate the things that makes them womanly when those things become commodities, so to speak. When those things become okay, when lawlessness comes, and when you know that if a man wants you, he could just take you, then you are gonna hate the fact that you're a pretty woman walking down the street, pretty woman, who because when the man says he thinks he loves you, I'm playing off of that song now, right? The song "Pretty Woman." If a man say he thinks he loves you, and you out there, jiving and shucking and showing off, he gonna have you. So with that, I'm gonna give all honor, glory, and praise to Yahweh Shemel Shai by Shemar Kakadash. All right. Double honor to the apostles, the elders of Great Millstone. Peace to the elect. Shalom.